Thanks for joining us today for a quick conversation, 30 minutes, about my new book, The Butterfly Impact, which just came out today. And I wanted to bring some of you into some conversations that we had in developing the book. And joining me today are Hope and Forrest, which are two of the four people who were part of my little book club advisory board. We did monthly Zoom calls throughout most of 2020 and into part of 2021. And they reviewed drafts and gave me feedback and asked me questions and really helped me come up with what is now the book that just came out today. So I'm very proud of the work, and I'm very proud of the collaboration that I've had, not only with Hope and Forrest, but all of the people, more than 100 people that I talked to for the book, and all of the stories and experiences that they all shared with me that really make up this collection of ideas and insights and perspectives. So I'm looking forward to this. So Hope, Forrest, thank you so much for joining, and once again, and for being part of this project.
Thank you, Mark. It's been great.
Yeah, it's been a real privilege.
All right, great. I want to talk about basically three of the themes, the bigger themes in the book in the next 30 minutes. And the book is kind of broken down into these three themes in one way. And that is, of course, work, and then there's life, and then there's this whole pandemic that we're still dealing with. So the opportunity for a reset. So let's start with the work question. And Jason Potts, who is not on the call today, but was part of our little advisory board group over the past year and a half, wasn't able to make it. He's actually on a plane right now, started a new job, and he did send me some thoughts that I wanted to share with folks, specifically about chapter 14, which is called "You Are the Culture." And he wrote and he said, coming to understand that I am the culture was really a game changer for me, Mark. There's something in those words, "you are the culture," that feels really empowering, because each of us has a place in ultimately shaping our work culture. And by feeling dejected and assigning blame, I lost sight of the small things I could do to make my work environment more hospitable for me and my colleagues. I am part of the culture, and if things are bad, I can choose to complain to my colleagues about it and inadvertently contribute to the atmosphere of negativity, or take ownership over how I can create change, and that power lies within all of us. I love what Jason said here, because it is the small things, but it's also the big things. One of the stories in the book when I was talking about this concept of "you are the culture" is just being in a conference room and watching 20 people, talk about a new idea in a direction, and then 18 people walk out and the two left behind, you're like, that's never going to work here. Because that's not the kind of culture that we have. That's not the kind of operation we run. And I said to them, well, wait a second. Every time you mention that, you're just dragging that culture that you don't like into the present. And you're just, really making sure that it stays alive instead of stays in the past. So Hope, Forrest, what do you think about when you think about being part of the culture, and what has that meant for the experiences that you've had in your workplace?
Well, I think, what you just said too about being present, right? Because we only really have the present moment in time, and the past is the past and the future hasn't come. So I think for me, I've learned along the way, like just jumping in, or, there's a difference between knowing the culture that you're dealing with and contributing to it. So I feel, again, to that reference you just made and the example that you said, when those people are like, okay, great idea, that'll never work here. And if there's no catalyst for change, and if you're going back to the way things are and staying stuck in that moment, there's no way to move things forward. So sometimes we can't control the way we move forward necessarily, but we can pull, like your book says, those small levers that maybe just create change. And maybe that's just even our attitude about a project or an idea or a thought. So that's what I thought about it.
Yeah, I'll kind of jump on that and share that it's what I really took from a lot of your conversations and a lot of your learnings was that there's always a chance to experiment, and there's no real neutral buoyancy. Either you're helping the team or you're hurting the team. And even in these micro moments, instead of getting defeated, what's the little experiment I can try to make it better next time? And taking that mindset repeatedly starts to back into A, the right solution, B, just like a competitive sports team or newscasting team, it's going to foster that around you. And that's exactly what you want, that experimental mindset of, okay, this could have been done better. What next?
Yeah, that's really important. And I think the notion of taking risks and trying things out and doing those little experiments really is something that resonated with me, not only in talking with you, but also in talking to other folks that are represented in the book. And it's about, this idea that not everything is going to work for everyone. And that goes with work culture, but also it goes to your own personal sort of routines and your systems. And there's a ton of books, and there's a ton of podcasts, there's all kinds of information out there, but you have to figure out what works for you and what works for your culture. So I love the idea of making sure that you're including experiments in every sort of phase of your life. And so if we want to move on to the life part of this whole equation of work and life, and really it comes down to, I think, first and foremost, building those boundaries that exist or should exist between work and life. And if we think about experiments, in the last 18, 20 months, we've all had to come up with some experiments to create boundaries that didn't used to exist, especially if you're working from home for the first time, especially if you had kids at home because they weren't in school, there were so many different factors that could have come into play during the pandemic. And I want to know what experiments that you both tried that worked for you or maybe didn't work, and sort of what you learned from trying those experiments, being forced into this pandemic world and trying to maintain these boundaries between work and life.
I feel like I deserve a buzzer.
You should next time. We'll definitely get the buzzer going.
Thank you. I love this mindset, and I was kind of drawn on this and I'm just looking at my notes here, but chapters 8 and 9, do what you love, do it often, and more play, not less. And so I think a lot of businesses, a lot of friends got wrapped up in micromanagement. Like, I can't be in the office anymore, so I've got this task list. I have to get through the task list. You start losing sight of that big strategic picture. You're starting to miss some of those water cooler talks. And so my favorite experiment was a friend started pulling together a group of people, and he would nominate a charity to speak for the first 15 minutes. And then on the back half, it would be someone who's done something really spectacular, ranging from a cinematic piece to an amazing business initiative. With the philanthropic push, you felt like you were really part of something neat and you had a unique set of skills to lean in. So that was a favorite. And one that didn't work was a standing desk. I like to pace. The standing desk just did not work. So those are mine.
So I think we do need buzzers for it. Yeah, it was, I'm going to be real. Like, it was a struggle on both sides. I think I've always struggled with boundaries. Apparently are a life lesson of mine to learn. So in all aspects of living. So it was really quite a thing to be thrown home when I was, at the office, and everything you said. And as, full disclosure, my son is in his room with our puppy right now, and I hear her banging against the door to get out. I'm like, mommy's got a Zoom. But so in all reality, right, it's not perfect. So again, bringing that element of play or experimentation and knowing that it's not going to be perfect, and trying to be okay with the lack of imperfection and flowing with that in a way that you're able to. And I think so that was like new for me, because I'm pretty type A, and I was very structured, and everything was very, very structured pre-pandemic. So having this area where my day is still structured at work, and I'm still, manifesting those hours, but obviously the environment in which I'm doing so is drastically different, and taking care of everyone else's needs. It was just like, what made it work, So we did things like, okay, well, maybe I'm going to invest in doing instead of like our food bill, look at that. Maybe I can do the meal kits 3 nights a week, and then I don't have to worry about that. And it's easy. And then we can come together as a family and do it. So that's off my plate. Think just practical things, I think, of experimenting with things to kind of bring it into reality. And then one more thing was, which I sometimes fail at still, but I work on, is holding those boundaries because of respecting home and work time. Because when you are home, I think it's very easy. Like I'll get up, I have my coffee, and I'm like, let me just look at my work email. And then 4 hours later, I haven't gotten up yet, right? And my day started at 7 instead of like 8:30 or 9 o'clock or whatever that may be. So really holding tight and making sure I'm creating that separate space for myself, and then finding little rituals to kind of separate the two in between your day, whether that's going for a walk outside after my day ends before the home day starts, or taking the dog, playing with the puppy, things like that.
Yeah, I think a lot of people had trouble both at the beginning and the end. If you were suddenly working from home and hadn't done that before. And I've been doing that too, is just trying to, 5 or 6 o'clock, whenever, it makes sense for that day, to, log off, put in a podcast, go for a walk, and just have a separation. Because I know lots of people actually have told me that without that commute, without having to drive home, there isn't that opportunity to sort of shift gears. And, I know some people have struggled with like just going downstairs from your office and taking maybe that frustration you just were experiencing at work, and then you bring it into your home life and you bring it to your children. And nobody wants to do that, of course. And then the other thing that I think in the morning, those boundaries are really important. I was just working with a client who said that he's just trying to stuff everything he can into the workday. He's got 2 really young children. His wife works as well. And so on the mornings where he has to take the kids to daycare, he, first thing gets his phone, looks at his email, and his logic to me was, so that way I can think about the work emails and what I need to do while I'm driving my kids to daycare. And I said, that's interesting. Try this. Try an experiment of waiting and then spending that time with your children and thinking about other things besides work. And you might actually be more energized and more fresh and more prepared throughout the rest of the day, because you had that space and you created that space for yourself to just be a person instead of an employee for that point. So I think that that's really, those boundaries, as you said, Hope, sticking to them is the hard part, right? Everybody can say you have boundaries, but it's the actual doing that matters, as we like to say. All right, cool. So then there was this pandemic, we just mentioned it. And one of the, things that we really tried to hit on with the book is this opportunity that came with it. Looking for silver linings, looking for opportunities to be creative in a crisis. I pulled out the quote that's been kicking around for decades: "Don't waste a good crisis." And, I think a lot of people saw that opportunity. And obviously there are some stories in the book that illustrate that. Some people who took advantage of doing something differently with this time or this opportunity, or just the way that life has changed. I, got to have so many Zoom calls with the 2 of you, plus Jason and Erin, and, developed this book and talked to all these other people who are in the book. And that was totally by accident. I didn't, when I was first starting to write this book, I did not intend to do a bunch of interviewing for it. I thought I was just going to pull in research, other books, other reference material. And then I did one interview, and it was so just energizing that I thought I should probably do another one. And then I did an interview, and someone said, who else you should talk to? And they introduced me to someone. So I met new people as well. And then, when it came time to work on the marketing of the book, the publisher said, well, how many people did you talk to? And I said, I don't know, maybe like 50. And they said, well, we'll go count, just so you know. And I counted, and it was more than 100. And it just sort of happened, one by one over time, over many months. And I will look back at that as being, the biggest silver lining for me during the pandemic was the fact that I wasn't on a plane. I had the time. I was working from home. I wasn't, visiting clients and doing 18-hour days on site. And so I had this opportunity, and it appears now as if I knew that that's what I was going to do when I started the project, but I had no idea, and it just sort of happened organically. So Forrest, Hope, whoever wants to hit the buzzer first. Who do you have one of those sort of looking back, it looks obvious now, but it only was possible because of the pandemic sort of silver linings?
Wow. Well, I didn't write a book.
You helped write one.
Yes. But this was a pleasure, not, and not that I didn't have the work you did and I contributed a bit, but this was a wonderful project and I never would have been involved in this, speaking to your point. But I think it was I think mine was more philosophical. I think before the pandemic had hit, I had been on such a hamster wheel without even knowing that I was on a hamster wheel, like so regimented, so locked in. And it had happened in a way, right? It's almost like boiling water. They say, you sit in boiling water, you start to heat it up, you don't even know that you're boiling. It was one of those things. And it's not necessarily one thing that happened, but cumulatively, I didn't, and we talk about it, you talk about it in your book, and I think a really wonderful chapter all about burnout, right? And that's good for no one, personally or professionally. So I think being shoved in this environment, once I got through how do I get our design team working from home and setting, because that was pretty stressful. But once we got through those humps and we actually got into a rhythm of working from home and how efficient we could be, and then judging that with that work-life balance that everyone talks about, that I really just didn't have at all. That was really eye-opening. It was a huge gift for me, and spending time with my son. And then now being aware of that, understanding how that works, what I need to do, how to take care of myself a little better, which I think overall not only affects me, my home relationships, but my relationships at work and with the team that I support, and the level that I can do that at.
That's great.
I think professionally, like a lot of people, my world was turned upside down. Very fortunate that we still had an opportunity to do business, but things changed overnight. Whole industries that we had worked very closely with were on indefinite pause. And just kind of in keeping with this don't waste a good crisis, we thought about and kind of ideated expansively, what could we do then with this free time? And one of the first experiments was, well, nobody can be in person. So maybe now we can address some of those folks that we always wanted to work with across the globe. And the hours are horrible now because I don't think there's a time zone where we're not doing a call, but the learnings, the relationships, the things that people are working on that can change the world that I had no idea about, but now I'm familiar with, has been super rewarding. And, all of the little relationships throughout the way, I think you kind of value them more now. Like my wife will always laugh. Somebody comes over to do work on the house and I'm going to chat with them for a good 30 minutes. My refrigerator repairman just broke apart my ice maker to show me which circuit fried. And I was like, tell me more. What kind of beer do we like this season? And leaning into it's just been a real positive. And I think on the personal side, you get the same lesson. If you experiment intentionally, you don't ever need to be caught in a rut. And, there are really good ripple effects to be had when you start making those positive changes. So those would be mine.
And long distance driving for you.
Love long distance. Didn't know I liked long distance driving, but yeah, adore it.
How many trips did you make from New Jersey to Montana?
4 in 12 months, and the next one's in 2. For context, this sounds really weird, but I can't afford to fly private. I like my dogs. So yeah, 36 quick hours.
Which is awesome. I love that. Okay, well, we got about 10 minutes left, and so I'm going to turn the tables on myself here and invite you both to ask me questions, since I've been asking you questions for a year and a half now. So about the book process or the project, anything about it, what's next, fire away.
All right, Mark. So I, obviously being involved in this, I know some of the stories of all these amazing people that you've interviewed and had lovely conversations with along the way, and even some experiences. So out of that, who would you say has the longest ripple effect on your life, and why?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, I'm fortunate that my best friend since 7th grade is in the book and is still my best friend. And Brad Benson owns a brewery named Stoop, and that is where I'll be having the book launch party tonight in Seattle. And just simple longevity, right? We've been together for a long time. We were college roommates in Seattle when we first moved here. Our parents have places on Lake Coeur d'Alene in Idaho next to one another. So we get to see each other on summer vacations with the families. And, it's just having someone that that well and for that long through all of the ups and downs that is life makes a huge difference. And, it's friends like him that I guess, make it possible to keep bouncing back, to keep finding resilience, and to keep experimenting and taking risks and putting myself out there. So I'd have to pick him. Yeah, for sure. Great question though.
No, I love that, because then too, like, good friends, no matter their role, really good, like those kindred spirit type friends, right? They're our cheerleaders. So I love that.
Yeah, they absolutely are. And they call you on your shit. And that's important too.
Yes.
Forrest?
So I don't want to compete with that question. So I'm going to go a completely different direction. Two-part question, Mark. Part one, one celebrity interview to add to the book. Who would it be and why? And part two, which experiment or learning from your interviews are you using the most currently?
Okay. Part one, this is going to be a surprise, especially for people who know me and know that I'm not a big fan of country music, but I would pick Keith Urban because, strangely enough, I was in a session where he was speaking at South by Southwest a few years ago. I was with somebody who wanted to go see him, and so I'm like, oh, okay. And he was really good, and he said a bunch of things that I took notes on in my phone, and a lot of it was very, very similar to the energy and sort of the feeling that ended up in the book. And so that would be the surprising one I think I would put in there. And then the other question was, what experiment did I learn from writing the book that I'm using in my work the most? That is a good question. Yeah, I honestly think it's the person that you introduced me to, Gianna Viscontini, who has such great wisdom and advice for leaders of organizations and just for people in organizations. And one of the things that she said that I've repeated probably most often is, if you remember the old school projectors that you had in grade school, and there was a transparency the teacher would write on and then put the transparency down, and you could see it on the screen. She said, okay, imagine you have one of those, and on the projector is your work calendar, your whole life calendar too, right? So Monday through Friday or Sunday through Sunday, you can see everything and all of your appointments and all of your commitments. And then take a separate transparency and write your values, the things that are the most important to you. What is it? Is it, you say it's your family, you say it's spending time outside, you say it's, this hobby or that activity. So write those down and then overlay them. And do they match up? And do you see, your values in your calendar? Because that's where you're spending your time. And what she said, and what I put in the book, is where you spend your time is what you value. So if you don't see it on your calendar, then there's a disconnect. And so, because we don't use those old school projectors anymore, I advise people to color code their calendar, which is something that Erin, who was on this call, remember when I made her demo her color coded calendar? And that's really illuminating, especially if you put things, color code them towards your values. You can at a glance look at the week ahead and know if you're on track with what you said you value, or if you're saying one thing and doing another. And a lot of folks, I think, had that realization and that sort of reckoning with the pandemic. I know I did. So
I'm taking 2 quick learnings. 1, we need to get a book to Keith Urban. So let's run some quick experiments. And 2, you must build better relationships and ask better questions, because she hadn't shared that pearl with me. So truly, you're good at your work.
That's really funny. So Hope, you said that you want me to show the book.
Yeah, we had one of the guests here, Pamela, asking if you could show the book.
There it is.
Pull it up a little higher. There you go.
Okay, and for those of you who don't know, this is a hand-drawn butterfly that my son Jalo drew. He just graduated from an art school here in Tacoma, Washington, and is a fantastic artist. And I'm very honored that his artwork is on the cover of my book. So that was also another positive ripple effect from the whole project. And I guess maybe I should put the link to the buying the book in the chat too, huh?
Probably a good idea.
All right, well, we only have a couple more minutes left. Does anybody have any questions they want to throw in the chat? Or Hope or Forrest, if you have anything else that you want to ask or bring up or mention from your time on this project?
I'll just say mindset. Like, you just did it again, right? Like, finding the art for your book was another opportunity to build a meaningful connection and get it really right. And I think that intentionality and that mindset has been a positive that I've taken from you, your book, the team you've put together. So just thank you for that. It's been great.
Yeah, and I think I want to mention, like, when we had, our Zoom calls, however often they were, because they were at the end of one of my longest days of my week because of Zoom call schedules now that we all, right? And so I was always like, oh, I have to do another Zoom call. But then I would hop on with you all, and even, our 2 lovely friends who are missing. And especially because obviously everyone's personalities, it was great to get to know everyone, but the subject, right? There were always like these tools and tricks. And it was just interesting because a lot of times I found like I had dealt with something in my day that then we would be talking about in the evenings. And it was just like this beautiful way. So, and one thing I do want to mention for people who, will be purchasing your book that I love that you did, and I want to call attention to, because I'm not a person, I tend to sometimes read a book back, like self-help books. I mean, not like a novel, but I skip around, I look for what I want to read about and do. And you have these lovely butterfly signposts and markers throughout the book, which really call to action and are really wonderful about addressing, like, okay, here's this concept I just talked about, but here's how you can maybe apply it in your life. And I just think that's really valuable. Thank you.
And that was a suggestion that came from the group calls. I remember, I think it was Jason who suggested that. So yeah, it was definitely a team effort, and the collaboration was fantastic. And it was so great for me to not have to do this in a vacuum and to be able to bounce these ideas around and know that I was on the right track from the very beginning. So I appreciate all the time that you both gave to this project, as well as Erin and Jason, who couldn't be with us today, but we'll figure out a way to get the 5 of us back together for something soon. All right, well, I like to start meetings on time and end meetings on time, so I'm going to do that again today. So thank you to everyone who joined us today. Appreciate your support. And again, thanks, Hope. Thanks, Forrest. This is always a pleasure, always a great opportunity. I might have to write another book just so we can resume the book club again and keep doing this. So that'd be the one thing that would motivate to do it right now. Because right now I don't feel like writing another book, to be honest.
I'm sure. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks everybody. Go ahead.
Have a beer for me at the launch party.
I will definitely do
Here's
that.
you in spirit.
I will definitely do that. Okay. Thank you so much. Everybody have a great rest of your day. And yeah, we'll talk to you soon. Okay.